I genuinely believed I was following God, but in reality, I was creating my own mess. And that realization didn't come immediately. It came after the damage, after the confusion, after the regret. There were seasons where I was so confident, so sure that what I was hearing was divine instruction. I used the right language. I prayed the right prayers. I even quoted scripture, but later, I was left staring at consequences I couldn't explain. And the hardest part wasn't that things went wrong. The hardest part was realizing that God didn't fail me. I misunderstood him. In this video, I'm not here to sound spiritual. I'm not here to impress anyone. I want to be honest. I want to talk about the moments I misinterpreted God's voice, what it cost me emotionally, financially, relationally, and what those mistakes taught me about true discernment. Because this issue is far more common than we admit. And when we don't talk about it, one of two things happens. We quietly carry shame, or we slowly stop trusting God altogether. If you've ever said, "I really thought God told me," and the story didn't end the way you expected, this conversation is for you. Let's talk about how this happens. Here's a hard truth most faith spaces avoid. Misinterpreting God's voice doesn't usually come from rebellion. It often comes from sincerity without discernment. We don't wake up planning to deceive ourselves. We usually want clarity, peace, direction, especially in moments of pressure. And pressure is dangerous, because pressure makes urgency feel spiritual. I remember a season where I desperately wanted change. I was uncomfortable, restless, tired of waiting, and suddenly, every internal nudge felt like God speaking. Every coincidence felt like confirmation. Every open door felt ordained. But psychology has a name for this. Confirmation bias. We naturally notice evidence that supports what we already want to believe and ignore what challenges it. Spiritually, it shows up when we highlight verses that support our desire. We skip passages that call for patience. We label discomfort as lack of faith. The truth is desire has a voice. Fear has a voice. Ego has a voice. Trauma has a voice. And all of them can sound convincing, especially when wrapped in spiritual language. Faith does not automatically equal discernment. Maturity does. One of the most misunderstood ideas in modern Christianity is this: if I have peace, it must be God. But peace can come from many places. I once made a major decision because I felt peaceful about it. But looking back, what I felt wasn't peace. It was relief. Relief that I didn't have to stay in discomfort. Relief that I could escape uncertainty. Relief that change was finally happening. True peace has depth. Relief has urgency. Peace can coexist with fear. Relief usually avoids it. After that decision, reality hit hard. Financial pressure increased. Anxiety grew. Sleep disappeared. And I remember asking God repeatedly, "Why would you lead me here?" And slowly, quietly, I realized something painful but freeing. God never spoke. I filled the silence with my own voice. And here's something important. God's silence is not permission. Waiting is not disobedience. Sometimes the most spiritual answer is not yet. Misinterpreting God's voice. It's not just a private spiritual struggle. It bleeds into everything. Your relationships, your finances, your peace of mind, and most painfully, your trust in God himself. I've been there. I once pursued a relationship I was utterly convinced was God. I prayed. I fasted. I felt this overwhelming intensity and mistook it for divine confirmation. But there were warning signs. Clear ones, if I'd been willing to see them. Our values didn't align. There was an emotional imbalance, a check in my spirit that I brushed aside as simple fear, and I told myself, God is just stretching me. But there's a difference between being stretched and being strained to the breaking point. The end was painful for both of us. And in the quiet aftermath, the question that so many of us are terrified to ask finally surfaced. Did I disobey God, or did I just misunderstand him? Here is the hard truth I had to swallow. Some lessons in discernment are learned only through the sting of consequence. Not every mistake is a punishment. Sometimes, it's an education, and while the pain was so real, it fundamentally reshaped the way I listen. Let me share the warning signs I've learned slowly, honestly, and through experience. First, Be cautious when the voice you hear only flatters your ego. If the guidance always makes you look impressive, if it conveniently skips over humility and character growth, pause. God cares far more about who you are becoming than what you are achieving. Second, be wary when urgency replaces wisdom. God can and does act suddenly, but he rarely demands panic. If the message feels like, do it now or you'll miss God forever, that pressure is not from a divine source. Third, notice when accountability feels threatening. If wise, godly counsel feels like resistance instead of protection, that is a major red flag. God's true voice can withstand scrutiny. A false certainty will always run from it. And fourth, look at the fruit. Is it chaos? I don't mean discomfort. Growth is often uncomfortable. I mean chaos. God may challenge you, but he will never fracture your soul. Your feelings are real, but they are not your authority. True discernment requires a firm foundation. Scripture, community, time, and a humble heart. When you've misinterpreted God's voice, something inside you breaks. Sometimes it's your trust in God. More often, it's your trust in yourself. You might find yourself praying with less confidence, hesitating, second-guessing every single thought. Healing for me began with one simple, difficult step. Admitting I was wrong, without drowning in self-hatred. God does not pull away from you because you misunderstood. Growth requires humility, not shame. In fact, some of the most spiritually mature people I know are the ones who can say, I once thought God said something he didn't, and I learned from it. Your mistakes do not disqualify you, but pride will. So, what does a healthier way forward look like? This is what I practice now. Stillness before a big decision, because noise creates a false sense of clarity. A deliberate delay before I declare something as God's will, and leaning on community over isolation, because discernment grows best in safe, honest spaces. I've learned to prioritize character over outcomes, trusting that God is shaping me, not just my path. Discerning God's voice isn't a one-time event. It's a lifelong relationship. And like any relationship, it matures with time, with patience, and with grace. Have you ever felt like you completely missed what God was trying to tell you? You thought you heard one thing, but then life took a completely different turn. If you've ever felt that way, you're in good company. In fact, some of the greatest heroes of the Bible had moments where they seriously misheard God. Today, we're going to dive into their stories and see what we can learn about hearing God's voice more clearly in our own lives. Let's start with a young boy named Samuel. The story, found in 1 Samuel chapter 3, is probably familiar to many of you. Samuel is serving in the temple under the high priest, Eli. One night, he hears a voice calling his name. He immediately assumes it's Eli. So he runs to him and says, "Here I am. You called me." But Eli says, "I didn't call you. Go back and lie down." This happens not once, not twice, but 3 times. Can you imagine the confusion? Samuel is certain he heard something. He's responding in obedience, running to the person he thinks is calling him. But he's wrong. It's only after the 3rd time that Eli, who is spiritually dull but has a glimmer of wisdom, realizes what's happening. He tells Samuel, "Go and lie down. And if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" This story is so powerful because it shows us that even with a sincere heart, we can misinterpret the source of the voice we hear. Samuel's intention was pure. He was ready to serve, but he hadn't yet learned to distinguish God's voice from a human one. It took a mentor, someone with more experience, to point him in the right direction. This highlights a crucial first step in discernment. We need the wisdom of others. We can't always figure it out on our own. Sometimes, we need an Eli in our lives, a pastor, a mentor, a trusted Christian friend to help us recognize when God is speaking. The story also teaches us the importance of a willing posture. Samuel's response, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening," is a prayer we can all adopt. It shifts the focus from our own understanding to a humble readiness to receive whatever God has to say. Now, let's fast forward to the New Testament and look at one of Jesus' closest friends, the Apostle Peter. Peter was known for being bold, passionate, and often speaking before he thought. In Matthew chapter 16, Jesus has a pivotal conversation with his disciples. He asks them, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" After they give a few answers, he asks, "But what about you? Who do you say I am?" And Peter, in a moment of divine revelation, declares, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus affirms him, saying this wasn't revealed by flesh and blood, but by the Father in heaven. This is Peter at his best, hearing God clearly and speaking truth. But just a few verses later, the story takes a sharp turn. Jesus begins to explain that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer, be killed, and then rise again. How does Peter respond to this? He takes Jesus aside and begins to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he says. "This shall never happen to you." Think about that. One minute, he's a mouthpiece for God's revelation. The next, he's actively trying to stop God's plan. Jesus' response is swift and shocking. "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." What up? Peter heard the first part of God's plan, that Jesus was the Messiah, but his human expectations and desires got in the way of hearing the second, more difficult part. He imagined a conquering king, a political Messiah who would overthrow Rome. The idea of a suffering, dying Messiah didn't fit his script. He essentially put God in a box defined by his own understanding. Peter's mistake is one we often make. We get excited about a promise from God, but we ignore the process. We want the victory without the battle, the resurrection without the cross. We hear blessing, but we tune out when God mentions sacrifice or patience. Peter's story is a powerful warning to listen to the whole counsel of God, not just the parts that we like or that fit our preconceived notions. It challenges us to surrender our agenda and trust that God's plan, even when it involves suffering, is ultimately for our good and His glory. We must constantly ask ourselves, am I listening for God's will, or am I just looking for confirmation of my own? Finally, let us journey to a dark cave on a lonely mountain with one of the most powerful prophets in the Old Testament, Elijah. In 1 Kings chapter 19, Elijah is on the run. He's just come from a massive spiritual victory on Mount Carmel, where he called down fire from heaven and defeated the prophets of Baal. You'd think he'd be on top of the world, but one threat from Queen Jezebel sends him spiraling into fear and depression. He runs for his life, travels for 40 days into the wilderness, and ends up hiding in a cave, telling God he just wants to die. God meets him there and tells him to go out and stand on the mountain, for the Lord is about to pass by. What happens next is a masterclass in discerning God's presence. First, there's a powerful wind that shatters the rocks, but the Bible tells us the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there's an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. Elijah was a man accustomed to the spectacular. He dealt in fire from heaven, dramatic showdowns, and big miracles. He probably expected God to show up in another grand, powerful display. He was looking for God in the thunder, in the earth shaking, in the consuming fire. He was listening for the kind of voice he was used to. But after all the noise, after all the drama, what came next? A gentle whisper. A still, small voice. And when Elijah heard that, he knew it was God. He pulled his cloak over his face and went out to meet with the Lord. This is such a profound lesson for us. We often look for God in the earthquakes of our lives. The big career change, the dramatic healing, the miraculous financial provision. And God certainly can and does work in those ways, but more often than not, He speaks in the gentle whisper. He speaks in the quiet moments of prayer, through a verse of scripture that seems to jump off the page, in the wise counsel of a friend, or in a persistent, gentle nudge in our spirit. Elijah's experience teaches us that we can mishear God simply by having the wrong expectations of how He will speak. We might be so busy looking for a bonfire that we miss the quiet flicker of a candle. We need to learn to quiet the noise of our lives, the busyness, the anxiety, the endless distractions, and cultivate a heart that is sensitive enough to hear the whisper. God isn't always shouting. Sometimes, His most profound messages come in the quietest moments, when we are simply still and know that He is God. So what do we take away from these 3 stories? From Samuel, we learn the importance of having a mentor and maintaining a posture of humble listening. From Peter, we learn to surrender our own agenda and embrace God's whole plan, not just the convenient parts. And from Elijah, we learn to listen for God, not just in the spectacular, but in the still, small whisper. The common thread through all of this is grace. Samuel was patiently taught. Peter was sternly corrected, but immediately forgiven and restored. Elijah was gently comforted and given a new mission. Mishearing God is not a sign of failure. It's part of the journey of faith. It's in these moments of misinterpretation and correction that our spiritual ears are fine-tuned. God doesn't give up on us when we get it wrong. He uses those very moments to draw us closer, to teach us His ways, and to deepen our relationship with Him. So if you feel like you've misheard God, don't be discouraged. Don't let fear or confusion paralyze you. Instead, take it as an invitation to find a wise mentor like Eli, an invitation to examine your heart for any personal agendas like Peter, and an invitation to quiet the noise and listen for the gentle whisper like Elijah. God is speaking. Our wonderful, grace-filled job is simply to learn how to listen. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this message encouraged you. If it did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. May you go into your week with ears open and a heart ready to hear from Him. God bless you.